Zeal Education Society, redefining excellence.
Hello everyone, my name is Suresh Jangid. Today I am going to present PPT on case study of scatter diagram used as SQC tools. Presentation is done under the guidance of the subject teacher, Professor Srikant Kulkarni, project guide, Professor A.N. Wakure, and my group member are Suresh Jangid, Rohit Kamble, and Prathamesh Kulkarni. Now let us take a look at our content. Abstract, Introduction, Scatter diagram procedure, Uses of scatter diagram, Example of scatter diagram consideration, Advantages, Limitation, and conclusion. Now let us take a look at abstract. The scatter plot is one of the 7 tools used while analyzing any kind of data. Quality engineer must note this. The scatter plot is mathematical diagram with XY graph to reveal the data sets. So it is required to kind of the different data set. First is independent variable data. Second is observed measurement as dependent data. By calculating both the datasets with the scatter plot, we can get or conclude that the data indicate there is a relationship between them related to the example. The scatter plot can be referred as scatter charts, graphs, and XY scatter or scatter diagram. Introduction to scatter diagram, which is called as XY graph. The scatter diagram pairs of the numerical data with one variable on each axis to look for a relationship between them. If the variables are correlated, the better the correlation, the tighter the points will hug the line. This causes the analysis tool in the considered one of the 7 basic quality tools. When to use scatter diagram? When we have paired number data as well as when our dependent variable may have multiple values for each value of our independent variable. Next point is when trying to determine whether the 2 point variable are related, such as when trying to identify potential root causes of problems. After brainstorming causes and effect using a fishbone diagram to determine objectively whether a particular causes and effect are related, determining that two effects appear to be same. When testing for auto correlation before considering a control. Now let us take a look at the process of the scatter diagram. First, we should have the collection of the pairs of data where a relationship is suspected. Now we have to draw with the independent variable on the horizontal axis and the dependent variable on the vertical axis for each pair of the data. Put a dot or a symbol where the x-axis value intersect the y-axis value. Put them side by side touching so that you can see both. Now look at the both pattern of the point to see if a relationship obvious. If the data clearly form a line or curve, you may stop because variables are correlated. You may wish to use regression or correlation analysis now, otherwise complete step 4 through 7. Now divide point on the graph into 4 quadrants if there are x points on the graph. Count 2 points from the top to bottom and draw a horizontal line. Now count 2 points from left to right and draw vertical line. If the number of the point is odd, draw the line through the middle point. Count the point in each quadrant. Do not count the point on the line because they are not considered. Now add diagonally opposite quadrant. Find smaller sum and the total number of the point in all quadrant. A is equal to point in upper left plus point in lower right. B is equal to points in upper right plus point in lower left. Q is equal to the smaller of the A and B. N is equal to A plus B. Look up the limit for the n on the trend test table. If q is less than the limit, the two variables are related. If q is greater than or equal to limit, The pattern could have occurred from the random chance. Here we can see an example of the scatter diagram, or we can say a table. Now let us move forward. Let us see the uses of the scatter diagram. A scatter diagram is used to understand the influence of the independent variable to dependent variable and what is the best fit to get the desired value of the dependent variable. Scatter diagram is used in the quality plan process as a preventive approach. A scatter diagram is used in the control quality process as a corrective action approach to understand the causes of the poor performance. To conclude, a scatter plot is a mechanism to understand the influence of independent variable over dependent variable. Scatter diagram is one of the 7 basic quality tools. You can watch and listen to the live video presentation on the 7 basic tools of the quality here. Here now let us take an example of the scatter diagram where the double Z400 manufacturing team suspect a relationship between product purity and the amount of the iron. Purity and the iron are plotted against each other as a scatter diagram as shown in the figure in the next slide. There are 24 points. Median lines are drawn so that the 12 points fall on each side for both percent purity and ppm iron. To test for a relation, they calculate A, B, Q, N, where A point in the upper left plus point in the lower right, B is equal to point in the upper right plus point in the lower left, Q is equal to the point of the A and B minus the smaller of the 18, n is equal to a plus b. So calculate the numericals. Then they look up the limit for the n on the trend test table where the q is the equal to the limit. Therefore, the pattern could have occurred from random chance and no relationship is demonstrated. Here you can take a look at the scatter diagram for quadrants and the dots on the lines which are not considered while the calculations, and the dots inside the quadrants are to be counted for the numerical, where x-axis represents the purity, y-axis represents the iron parts per million. Let us take a look at the consideration of the scatter diagram. Even if the scatter diagram shows a relationship, do not assume that one reliable cause the other. Both may be influenced by a third variable. When the data are plotted, the more diagram resemble a straight line, the stronger the relationship. If a line is not clear, the static determine whether there is reasonable certainty then a relationship exists. If the statics say that no relationship exists, the pattern could have occurred by random chance. If the diagram shows that no relation, consider whether the independent x-axis variable has been varied widely. Sometimes a relationship is not apparent because the data do not cover a wide enough range. If the scatter diagram shows no relationship between the variables, consider whether the data might be stratified. Let us see the advantages of the scatter diagram. It is the best method to show you a linear pattern. Next, the range of the data flow, that is maximum and minimum, can be determined well. Next, observation and reading are straightforward. At last, the plotting the diagram is easy. So those were the advantages of the scatter diagram. Now let us see the limitations. Scatter diagram cannot give you the exact content of the correlation. A scatter diagram does not show you the quantitative measurement of the relationship between the variable. It only shows the quantitative expression of the quantitative change. This chart does not show you the relationship for more than two variable data sets. At last, now we will see the conclusion of the scatter diagram. A scatter diagram is used in the quality control process as a corrective action approach to understand cause of poor performance of variable to independent variable effect. To conclude, a scatter plot is a mechanism to understand the influence of independent variable over dependent variable. Thank you.
Zeal Education Society, redefining excellence.